right, looks like we're live. There we go. Thanks all. Apologies for the delay. We had a little bit of streaming go live error with connection. Now is fixed. Thanks for all for joining. It's Thursday. It's time again for our Anchore, our weekly Anchore open source gardening session. We are the Anchore open source team. Today we've got Chris Phillips, Keith Zanto, and myself, Dan Nurmi. We're on the open source engineering team. And over here at Anchore, we develop open source tools. You'll see up on our share, we've got Syft and Grype, another tool called Grant, and a number of other projects. All of it essentially oriented around the idea of you've got software, you'd like to get some more insights, perform some interesting functions like generating SBOMs, doing vulnerability scans, doing deep license checks, finding more information out about the software you've got in container images or source code checkouts. Basically anything you've got is our sort of target. Every week we get together and have this session where we go through our community issues, anything labeled with needs discussion. We go through community PRs, and every once in a while some sort of interesting topic that's come up that might require a lot of deep debate and discussion and kind of chewing on the issue, trying to figure stuff out and turn it into actions. So let's get started. Let's see, we'll go over to our panel that's got essentially the needs discussion label across all of our open source tools against issues. So what do you guys think? Do you want to start at the top, ability to flag unused ignore rules? Or do you want
Sure.
to kick down?
Yeah, let's take a look.
All right, let's take a look. This is Grype 3050. Yep. Excuse me. So let's see, ability to flag unused ignore rules.
So this is one I've responded to a bit. I was just sort of curious to have some of the team's input on this kind of a thing. From my understanding, I think what the user is asking for is they have some ignore rules defined in a Grype YAML. They run a scan and they want to know which of those didn't apply. And I mean, I think that's maybe not a very common use case for the ignore rules. I would expect people to maybe, add some things in that file, run a scan on a bunch of different things, and like whenever they apply, of course, they filter out the things that they want to ignore. But to get a list of the ones that don't apply, I thought was an interesting kind of request. And so I did respond on there to sort of help out a little bit. I told them about, the way that Grype works. With the ignore rules, we do move the vulnerabilities to a different section of the document. So there's a way that they can run a scan, get a list of the ones that did apply, and then of course compare that themselves with the list of ignore rules in their document. But I was just kind of wondering if what kind of use case would this unlock, and are there any other types of things that we could do with Grype to report information like this back that might be useful?
I think the tough thing for me is I've been trying to like take the user's comment where he says a Grype config option, which takes the JSON output from a scan and compares it to the ignore section, and squaring it with what you just said, Keith. And like the whole reason you made the comment on this PR, which is we don't want to just keep decorating flags on the program of things that might not be so frequently used. I think config is too large of a space for this. Like if I did Grype config prune, okay, that's more about the whole config, not about the rules. So you have to do like Grype config rules tidy, but that's like kind of long. And then it's and then I try to think of what are the other use cases besides the rules of things that we would tidy in the config or things that we would clean up based on a previous scan. Like the stuff that like you outlined, Keith, like what other things do we want to surface? So like the first impression of the issue is, wow, this is really good. Like there's a utility for this. Let's do it. But then the second pass is, I can't think of other things we would do this for off top of mind. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, it is an interesting use case. It kind of reminds me of the use case where, a lot of tools that do like a scan are very much oriented around the idea of like telling you what it found, but it doesn't necessarily tell you of everything it did, if that makes sense. Right? And there is a use case of saying like, look, um, you know, I've run this tool. It has scanned 100 things, and 10 of them have a finding, but the other 90 don't. Right? And like that information is in the data, but it's usually not like a highlight or sort of an output like report option that at least I commonly see. Does that make sense? Like this kind of in my mind falls into that category of not just showing what is present, but also what has happened along the way, um, which is an interesting use case. This one in particular, I feel like I'm struggling a little bit to really understand the base use case, because it's not quite what I said, right? It's like, well, I could imagine the analogy would be in the output somewhere, there's some way to see you have defined, 100 ignore rules, and all 100 of them are displayed. And then the column next to it is this one was applied and these were not, because the specific scan that you performed didn't have the material that they would be applied. It's similar in my mind to that use case of seeing like everything that has happened, including the things that generated no output, no result, no positive match.
It kind of reminds me in that sense of the thing that Will talks about sometimes with negative matches,
Right.
right? Like there are certain types of things that it's interesting or useful to know that they were present but not matched. I mean, it's kind of what this seems like, but from the config side instead of from the vulnerability side. Um, and I guess,
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say maybe another option would be to, I mean, we have a function in Grype that's kind of meant for this type of thing, and it's still experimental as far as I recall, which is explain. I kind of wonder if this might be an interesting area to add some, like another view on the explain function. Because explain is an operation where you actually give it an actual Grype scan, and it will take a look at that Grype scan and tell you information about what's in there, and it has access to your config. So I don't know, it's just another potential place where we might experiment with this type of report, essentially.
I
Chris?
think there's another aspect I want to explore in this before we start thinking about like where it could land too, which is our ignore rules are really they're really broad. Like you can be very specific and say, "Oh, I want to ignore this vulnerability ID specifically." But you can also like have vulnerability aliases, you could have namespaces, you can have the fixed state, you could have the match type. So I could like I could see a use where someone ignored a very specific vulnerability or like crafted a rule based on the data that was at the time that they crafted that rule. But then we all work in this business. We know data is like the most temporal thing. It changes all the time. So like as time moves on and as vulnerability records get updated or different values get put in, or let's just say an author like changes the name of a package, and all that works its way through the vulnerability ecosystem where it gets updated on the record. This kind of feature could stop an ignore rule from either masking new or masking legitimate findings based on the data changing from under it, right? So I'm we're talking about show us things where rules are not being used, but also potentially show us things where like a rule could be masking something that we don't want to mask. And I don't know how to answer that, but I was trying to come up with different, like, okay, if the use case of one is a rule not being used, what other things do I want to highlight about my rules? I want to highlight if they're masking things that actually could be critical findings, and I want to highlight ones that um, I don't have a third one yet. I thought I would, but don't stop me yet. I'll think of a third. And maybe there is like a whole like ecosystem of utility tooling around how to explore and explain rules. Because Keith brought up in our community meeting today, he thinks in rules of three, and I think that that's a great rule, right? If you can find like if you can think of three different ways that something can be applied, like other ways you want to inspect the rules, then it's a good signal as to like build the utility command and carve the space in the program for it. The term might leak.
Right, exactly. And I mean, I don't really have the second and third that seem to fit with this one just yet, to me at least. But yeah, maybe if we could have some other information that was kind of analogous to this, it would help understand what the right thing to do is. Um, I just wanted to mention I didn't realize this when I wrote the first response, but we do so we output the ignored matches, and we also output the config that was used
Right.
in the JSON.
It's all in
So
there. Yeah.
yeah, we probably could do some like even more JQ magic to sort of like, actually answer that question by, something like, oh, is this present in this list of rules here, ignored matches or not? And then, I don't know exactly. I'm not quite the JQ guru to do that, but it might be possible.
Or even like, what do you think about a template?
Yeah, maybe. Templates are a little tricky to kind of
Yeah.
like build
Yeah.
a bunch of logic into is the
Right.
only.
I think I thought of a third one maybe where Um, you could do an explore or explain for rules where maybe an ignore rule is like going too, it's like too excitable, it's too broad, right? Where you get a scan back, but Grype is like, hey, did you mean to ignore 100 vulnerabilities with this one rule? Like, there's some heuristics you could put in there where, you could say like, we noticed your vulnerability report is now like so small because of this one rule. Is that what you intended? If so, thumbs up. You can like ignore this, ignore our output, but we can maybe help the user or explain to the user that like things are being truncated that shouldn't get truncated.
Yeah, I mean a good example I think would be if if we ignore, like, let's say you just put in a rule that was for a specific CVE, right? And that CVE ignored something for package A and for package B. Like, is that really what you wanted? I think chances are you were really targeting one of them, but the fact that like it started, like you said, being too broad, I think if we started to see, multiple packages that were surfacing vulnerabilities that were all both getting ignored by the same rule, that would be you know, a smell at least.
Yeah, because there's a lot of times where the data is not specifically like there's no guarantee that a CVE is one package and one thing. Like sometimes they are super broad, and it can be like a host of vulnerabilities in packages collated under one like finding that for whatever reason they didn't file the CVE against it, or there's like a CVE against the thing that's the root, and this upper CVE has like a couple packages because of N reasons of the data being created. So. Yeah, I'm getting more convinced that there are ways we could like help users who might be getting like a false warm fuzzy from using ignore rules in that way, and also to prune rules over time, which was the
Yeah,
original ask.
yeah. And that one I agree is very interesting, especially like I highlighted this one here. This might be, sorry if you guys already mentioned it, but it might be a kind of like a third case, right? Which is basically the way I interpret what this might look like would be something like you have an ignore rule, but you don't need it anymore because the data has changed since when you added the ignore rule, which I think is possible to detect.
Yeah.
That
What
might be a little bit more, it might require a little bit more analysis, but
No, I
what
like that.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, because that would be an almost like an auto prune or a warning saying like you have an ignore rule in, but it has no effect because we wouldn't have matched it anyway, even
what
without
if
the ignore rule, right?
yeah. What if we just tracked like the number of vulnerabilities that an ignore rule applied to, and we just added that number in to the output? Then it would be easy to see, whichever one has 0 would answer this question. And then you could also see, oh, this one applied to, 100 vulnerabilities. So it would
Mhm.
answer the questions like, oh, this is like, very broad for whatever reason.
Are you saying add the number into the applied ignore rules? No, because it's you can't add it in there because it's non-presence in that array means it wasn't applied. So the zero number would be applied where, like on the output.
It would have to be like the config or something. Yeah, it would be a little weird to put it there, but uh,
Right, because we don't denote it. If it doesn't apply, then there's nothing to put that number on right now because its non-existence is indicative of its uselessness in the scan.
well, except for the config, it does get output in the config.
Right.
So like that would be the only place that we have today without, making other changes. But hmm.
Mhm. I don't know where we go from here because this is like a spike. Like I've been peaked, like my curiosity's peaked, and I have ideas of use cases where this goes. So I'm not like close this. Like this isn't something that we'd ever put in the program. This is now conceivably something that would go in Grype. There's enough space for it, as far as like there's enough design space around the utility functions. But we don't have like a plan yet. We just need, you know, time and time and application of coding prowess to figure out what the spike looks like for this if we were to go forward.
Yeah, I kind of wonder, as an outcome of this discussion, what would you guys think about continuing the discussion on the issue, but trying to hone in on like, what would you like to see? Like, kind of start at the end and say, like, let's try to write down a theoretical output of the tool. Just to make sure, like, and then we can talk about, is it like a Grype config option? Is it something in explain? Is there a new utility function that's specifically oriented around helping people manage and understand their ignore rules? Does it go in the default output? Like, I don't know. It feels to me like it might kind of hone in on the use case.
I agree. Yeah, I'm happy to do it. I'm gonna put this in uh, needs proposal, and I'll write a little bit of what we talked about here.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. It also occurred to me, my original thought was, in my head at least, there's like a tabular view that has, here's all of your software. Here are the ones that have a vulnerability. Here are the ones where the vulnerability was suppressed, right? And just kind of looking at it that way. But I realized I don't think the Grype data has all of the software that was considered.
Yeah, it doesn't,
Yeah.
which that's part of it. And I'll wait in that view, would the last two columns, the middle and the one where they're not included, would they be inclusive of each other? Where it's like, hey, you had a vulnerability for this one, so it's in this column, and we ignored it, so it's in this one. So you'd see like foobar vulnerable, foobar ignored, like across them, or is
Yeah.
it like everything vulnerable not ignored, and then everything ignored, like it's either or kind of
I'm
view?
thinking of it as like from the, everything the tool did, like everything, right? So it's like
Right,
all of your software, all of the matches, suppressed or not, all of the,
right.
the
In
rules,
total,
right?
yeah, in total, less in total, like just getting smaller and smaller, but inclusive. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
kind of to that core idea of like, here's everything and how it all applied instead of just honing in on which is legit. I mean, the major use case I think for most is like, I want to see what is vulnerable and what has fixes so that I can do something about it. That's the default. But that
Yeah,
other view is like, here's everything that happened. There's a lot of like, you know, even if there are no vulnerabilities, you still see all of this software was scanned, nothing matched, and here's why. Like, to try to figure out if there's a view that can represent that whole report. It's
yeah, and
interesting.
it's just like a consumption problem. Like the latter one where it's like reduced, that's for like the human consuming it, but like the all data view is like if you're passing it off to another process because you don't want to drop anything. So it's like is computers are better at ingesting things of the whole picture. Humans are better with the focused, like I want to do this thing now and prioritize this.
Or
So you want both modes,
sometimes it's actually required for proof of practice, right?
right?
Where even if there are no negative findings, or like positive findings in this case, but problems discovered, you still need to prove that you did the scan and that the scan did something. And this type of report would be evidence of that. That's a bit more meta than the specific question, but it's interesting to think about for sure.
Out of curiosity, would some type of an audit log do that? Right, like there
It
was some
could,
match
yeah.
that happened to drop a thing, and the audit report was just included in,
Yeah,
probably be pretty big, but
yep. That's another way, like an actual just log of like things scanned, match found or not, and was suppressed or not. And then some metadata saying, here's all of the rules that were in place, is essentially a configuration, like you said, that are used or not. Yeah, it's
right.
interesting.
One of the things I've tried to do lately, with all of the Grype changes is any place that we filter out vulnerabilities, add at least a log that we're doing that. It's pretty easy to go through a list of things and just ignore them and do nothing. But I've tried to be pretty judicious about that with all of the changes I've made, at least. So
Interesting.
at the very least, I think that like a large part of that could be answered by the log today. But I'm sure there are some things that are missed.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Okay,
Okay, well, I did respond on that.
great.
So
Yeah, I think we're ready to move on to the next one then. In that case, Firefox is doing something. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the source supplier?
sure. And I put two links to two different PRs uh,
Okay.
in our chat.
Cool. I'll get them over
So
into the
yeah.
live chat.
So the gist of this, we had a couple of people join our office hours earlier today and talk about this as well. But the gist of this is Syft today has a couple of options, a couple of flags: the source name, source version, source supplier, and these three flags that it has. Um, the purpose of these is to supplement the SBOM with really at the SBOM metadata level, about what is the main thing this SBOM is talking about, a name and version. If it's something that it wasn't that wasn't being surfaced by the scan itself, a lot of times you're scanning something and you don't even have a version written down anywhere in the bytes. but you know what it is because you're building the software or, whatever that happens to be. And, source supplier is another thing, for NTIA compliance. So we've added these few things, and the couple of PRs that I referenced, they're adding more metadata to the output of Syft. And I think it's a good thing to do. I think all of these, they're generally good changes. But my hesitation, even going back to some of the source flags, has been I really think that there's a lot of, probably more data than just these two PRs that people want to add in. And really I've been, sort of hoping that we could come up with some way to, kind of have one flag that lets us specify, sort of all of that metadata in, one thing, one sort of consistent way. And so one of the things that we talked about earlier is, let me see if I can find a couple of links. Yeah. Okay, here is a link to one of the PRs, but to a particular spot.
All right, let me get over there.
Okay, so yeah, so this is this source config, and if you look here, this is like where the PR is changing. It's adding an authors field, so that's the metadata that this particular PR is trying to add. And the name, version, and supplier are all there. Those are the three things that are set from the existing three flags that I mentioned. And there's some other stuff there. Not everything in that struct is set by flags, but there are different things that set those values. And then the other PR is instead of adding a specific thing, adding a name value set of properties to add arbitrary things to this custom tag support. And so this one is adding, instead of authors being a specific known type of data, the other one, this is adding just name value pairs that get output in the SBOM. And then of course all of these get output in CycloneDX properties, for example, here, and or CycloneDX author, SPDX also, so all of the formats. And so my thought was, what if we have a flag that's, let's say, metadata, and what you give it is actually like a JSON string, maybe, or maybe some name equals value, comma separated or semicolon separated or something like that thing. And and that's the way you can set authors. You can set the the name, the version, sort of all of this metadata. And so the next time that somebody says, oh, I want to add reviewer as a document metadata, then there's a common pattern, and we don't have to add a bunch of flags to the CLI because it already exists there. They just go look here, they add the field here. There's an easy way to get it mapped to the the API sort of data model. Anyway, so that's the gist of kind of what we talked about, and I would really kind of like to work out some details to be very specific about asking for changes on the PRs, because I don't want to ask them to do something and then realize, oh, we should do it some different way.
How?
That's the gist of.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think this is really interesting, especially since like it's not just an arbitrary key value. Like if it were just this, right, that would be one thing. But some of these fields actually map to a specific like we need to understand what they are in order to convert them in the right way to all of the different SBOM formats. So it makes it slightly more complex in that you actually need to know this one is the name, this one's the author, this one's the version, like that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
And there's
So,
like
so yeah,
there's two modes too that it can operate in. It can be exclusive to a format, or it could be shared between formats.
right.
And then it's the question of like, does the field we pick in this document that gets submitted to color the metadata, does that name, is that one that we maintain the name? We say, okay, authors maps to, and then you do the dot selector for where in authors it is in SPX, and the dot selector to where it is in CycloneDX. So you have that like fan out, and then you have that other section, which is this is exclusive to this format. If you put data here and you run Syft and you want CycloneDX, none of this data that you put here is going to show up in your SBOM.
Yeah.
So it like there's like places where the funnel cuts off, there's places where it turns on. It's a little complex there from the mapping perspective and the naming.
Because otherwise, a generic key value solution would work. So that's one important, like in my mind, an important characteristic of the ask. But second,
It was also
so
something. Sorry, go ahead.
I just had a question. Like, do you think so far that this is going to be relatively constrained to reasonably flat types of data? Like, because as soon as we start needing to do things like nesting or like lists of elements that have key values and those records might have other lists, that's always when the concern starts to raise in my head about like putting JSON on a command line, because it starts to get really difficult to represent more complex data structures. So far, it looks like if we think there's a good chance that this type of requirement is going to live in the key value or maybe key list of values realm, and that will cover a lot of ground, then I'm with you in your proposal, Keith.
Right. Well, I mean, that was why my suggestion was like actually just a JSON string that directly maps to this structure,
Yeah.
or or a similar thing, so that because I don't really know the answer to that. I have a feeling that there are some things that will require structure, and there are some things that will require, like here there already is a list of authors, for example.
Yeah.
It's not just a key value. Go ahead,
Oh,
Chris.
I think the other thing to consider too, along like to Keith's point, is that anything we do here can't be a pass through. Like, I don't want this to be information that people submit on the command line. It passes through Syft and then magically makes it into CycloneDX or SPDX. Like, I think a lot of the foundational work on Syft and a lot of like the core of its identity is stuff that gets passed in is the absolute like truth, whether it's according to the user, according to what Syft surfaces. So it needs to find a place that's going to live forever in the Syft SBOM format. And then that's the stuff that then translates into, the CycloneDX or SPDX. Because you have like the rich document that always gets assembled and then transformed. And we need to figure out the place, which is like this source config, but we need to figure out how this place like grows and shifts and shapes to meet both like version updates in the future for CycloneDX and version updates for SPDX. But like as those morph, like how does our underlying data shape and SIFT also change to fit that? And how do we stay so that we can express both previous formats that have authors in one spot and future formats that might put it like if they do a breaking change, does that necessitate we have to do a breaking schema change, or can we stay very flexible and kind of be able to fan out the data no matter the version that we're trying to fit it into?
Well, I think that's very important, what you said, and Dan also kind of alluded to the same thing, which is that like a lot of this data, we really want to be in known locations in our data model so that we can do the appropriate thing with the other formats, and so we can just ingest them more appropriately too, right? I mean, because one of the things we do today is drop data that we don't have a place for. And so, the more things that we have analogous places for in our own data model, I think is absolutely the right way to go.
What are strategies for I haven't done a project or like had a use case or something like this before, but is the traditional like naive approach that I could think of doing is a flat list of like key value where the key represents the location in the JSON that you're sending the value to, and that key is just like again like the JQ like dot selection. And so then it gets like kind of fuzzy depending on the version of the document you're sending into because you can only do a flat list of like that for one version. So you have to have some string that then says like if you're converting to this version of the document, it goes to this field. If you're doing to this version, it goes to this. So then it's like then it gets even more fun because it's like not a flat list, but it's like SPDX V3 keys, put all of them here. SPDX V2 key like and then it gets even deeper because you do V2.2 and I don't know how to best organize the data is what I'm trying to say.
And I think it's just going to vary depending on what the specific fields are. I mean, I think it's, you're mentioning SPDX. I mean, that definitely is a different spot between version 2 and version 3, where that most of that stuff lives. So I don't know, but I mean, the one thing I will say is that at least like most of the things that we have today and the two PRs that we have linked to seem to be name value pairs for the most part. That again, the authors being a list, okay, maybe it's a comma separated name value, set of name values or something, but that seems to be the most of what people need to do, but I really don't know. And I really have a feeling that at some point we're gonna want to, kind of structure things a bit more. And so if we do something where we're just doing name value pairs or whatever, then we could build ourselves into a corner. But the other thing we could do is maybe allow a couple of different formats, right? Let's say you can just do a simple name equal value type thing, and then if you need to use the structured data, then you have to use JSON, and we just look for a object curly brace or something like that when we parse things, and support both for the easy case and for the more complex case.
Yep. I do very much like the approach of trying to figure out how to convert this now from every time there's a new specific thing for this one for source config, adding a new parameter seems like we're past 3 to your to your earlier point.
Right.
So it's worth thinking about how to make it more more general. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I guess then the only remaining question is naming. Does anybody have any good ideas for a parameter name?
Source config. Don't ask me. I'm terrible at names.
Yeah, I definitely have to stew on the naming of it for a bit too, because source, I really like the location that you picked out, Keith, in the code. Source config feels really good because that's where everything is right now. But the naming of it is like awkward to me because I can see people wanting to color things in that are outside of the source, right? I think it's too scoped for the long-term future of what like this would grow into. So that's what I'm like,
I
my
agree,
brain
and
is on.
I think that like the supplier already really, I don't know. I guess it's kind of a source thing, but yeah, I mean, like SBOM property is used here. I'm thinking of maybe document metadata, SBOM metadata, just metadata. I don't know, something.
Oh, back to the old metadata word. Oh,
Yeah,
years.
yeah, it's a bit generic then.
I kind of
Naming
like,
is
I
hard.
don't know, I kind of like SBOM properties. Like that's an, I feel like it's implying the right thing, which is it's, properties on the SBOM, not on an element of the SBOM or whatever. So I don't know, that one that one seems like a good for consideration.
I'm sicking a few of my local agents against the two JSON specs for SPDX and CycloneDX, I'm going to come up with like a rough non-inclusive list of like the similarities between them, like what does it think are equivalent. Then I'll do a deeper review to find like if there are any that were missed or anything that seemed incorrect. But I'll get those added to this issue. Do we have an issue for this? Can we make, should we create an issue that zips these two PRs together to like the final design of what this is going to look like? I can, if we don't have one, I can create that as part of the
I think that there was an issue. It was like in the list of
Is it that one option parameter that he linked?
uh, maybe,
'Cause
yeah,
this
that's
is-
one of them. Yeah. I think, yeah, there were a couple. Yeah, maybe that's the one I was thinking of. I know there are a couple of them. I can find that. I definitely still owe, yeah, some more specific guidance about how we want to make this all work. But it sounds like we're, reasonably on the same page about what we think should work.
Mhm.
Okay, well, that was the main thing I wanted to sort of talk about today. Was just, make sure that I'm not going to ask him to do something that we kind of don't agree with later. So I appreciate all of the
Nice.
discussion.
Well, I'm very much in favor of like this becoming the like Uber flag and deprecating like the individual flags that we have. Like this
Yeah.
becoming the one way to do the decoration going forward.
Yeah, I think exactly. Part of the changes will I think be that. Not necessarily in their PRs. It could be that
Yeah.
I take a first stab at implementing, just replacing the existing parameters with the new pattern and then deprecating them, and of course making sure that they still work. We'll see.
Excellent.
Do you want to?
Yeah, good topic. There's as you can see in the chat, as we walk through that discussion, there were four links to the ones we were looking at, but each one is linking to other ones. There's quite a bit of this type of stuff. So, bringing it all together, it's really, really cool to see that.
Well, before we move on, I had one of the big comments from the community meeting today, like the internal office hours, was that governments are getting better and better about like knowing what they want to ask for from these documents, and the tools, like our tool specifically, has to evolve to like be able to answer those questions. So as like the regulatory environment gets tighter and the questions get more precise about what data they want to see, we do need to offer these avenues open. So the pressure and the ask is correct from like the state of like where the whole system of governance is going. So I think that highlighted to me kind of the importance of this issue too. That it wasn't just like a one-off, oh, we need this for a very bespoke specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
No, this is like this isn't a direct response to the regulatory environment shifting and getting better.
Yep. And having a tool like Syft, where it has to configure the conversion to the various SBOM standard formats, I think makes it actually a pretty powerful conversation, because otherwise, I feel like the inclination would be, yep, it's metadata, they're key values, there's no context about them, they're just carried through, and then you end up with different people encoding it in different ways, because the compliance requirement says it has to be there. It doesn't enforce any sort of context or how it needs to be encoded. So by particularly taking into account, we want to add this in a way where we know also how to map it to the other standards that are supported, I think makes it a nice, robust situation that we're putting out there.
Yeah, the real complexity is going to be mapping it in a way that allows us to still be flexible as those standards evolve and change, so that we don't break previous ones that we've addressed. Like we can't just be like, cutting edge always and be like, oh, we support, custom stuff for the latest versions, but
Yeah.
previous versions, we have to drop that on the floor because, we wanted to reduce complexity. Like we need to solve the hard problem there.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, that brought us to issue number 2 with needs discussion. What would you guys like to do? We can keep on the issues. We can jump over to PRs if there's anything over there you think.
I didn't have a PR to pull up, but I did have one announcement to make. We have merged now both PRs in Syft and Grype. Syft was released with the fix. Grype is yet to be fixed, coming next. And the fix I'm talking about is we used an internal fork of the Anchore archives repo before. We're no longer doing that in both Syft and Grype. We're using the mholt upstream project. If you guys are still seeing any like security reports around the archives library being used from Anchore, please let me know. There was a RAR unarchiver dependency that we hadn't updated. We've moved to just use the upstream. So just tag me if you still see any kind of issues being filed against the tool, and we'll take a second look at it. But all portions of that remediation that we talked about last week have been concluded. So thank you to the community members that submitted those PRs and got those done. That one was the one that we closed because we had one that went in already. The one that you're looking at is 3516. Yeah.
One.
No. 4029. Sorry.
This one?
Yep, that's the one that we merged in for Syft. That release is done. That Syft release is out. This one was more complex than the Grype one because this one we were unarchiving all the things like as input to Syft. Grype, we are only unarchiving our own database, so it was like easier to think about. But again, both are done. So thank you again to the community.
No, thank you very much. I just wanted to pull out the specific one to put it in chat, so it's in our review or the summary of the meeting. Yeah. Nice.
If you have PRs that you'd like to discuss with us too, it's very effective to come to the office hours that we have. We got PRs merged, and that whole discussion at the beginning of this call was from those office hours. So if you've got stuff and it's just been dropped and has been looked at, we apologize, but just come poke us as real people, and we'll make a priority for it. So thank you again for all the contributions.
Yeah. Excellent point. Okay, well, we got about 10 minutes. Where would you guys like to go? We got a couple of PRs up here.
What's the CPE update field? Have we looked at that one?
Oh, I have no context for this one. Let's see. Grype 2845.
Yeah, let's take a look at this one.
NTP OpenSSH CPE NTP 4.2.8 ignoring. Is this because of the separator is a colon and the CPE separator is also a colon? So for that version string? Or is that P18 also part of the CPE? I have to look at the CPE format again. What that field would be.
This is JVM update. I think that's the right spot. Sometimes it's like update some number, I believe. What that is that field?
Yeah, update or I think release, that kind of like.
Yeah, it's product version update. So that P18 is the update field, which he said in the PR. And so it's not, sorry, I was trying to make sure that it actually was the update field and that it wasn't 4.2.8 colon P18 with some like version string that you could encounter in like the non-JVM wild. Let's see.
There's a linked
Combined version
issue.
update
Will
fields.
Blip needs discussion on this one. Will's not here today, but
That's okay. We can maybe divine why Will would want to discuss this one, and that would lead to.
yeah, I'm wondering if what I'm trying to figure out is like, what are we finding in the metadata, first of all? Is it actually that? It must be, right?
Yeah, it's a great question. I wish there was an example on this one of like something that could just have this. I guess I could try and build it and then figure out what we're finding and where. Well, okay, if you look at the before, it's interesting that see how before and it finds NTP and then the version is 4.2.8 P18, no separator. Like the version is that before. And
Right.
after like the version string remains unchanged between the before and after snapshot.
I think the issue here is that, right, that those versions are what we have in the database, right? And then the version in the CPE is separated into two fields. And so it's trying to find, and so like it matches because P18 is, non-zero after an equivalent version in the beginning. I could have sworn that I saw another thing that we were dealing with these P versions though, specifically.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah, keep going. Sorry.
I think that's what Will did, and probably why Will said needs discussion on this one.
Right, because that was going to be my next question is the PR says a general combine version update function that handles CPE version update field combinations for all package types. And if Will has already done a PR for this that was for a specific ecosystem, then maybe his intuition is that we keep it on a per ecosystem basis because that's a bit of a realm I don't know, would have to investigate for this. Is this generic? Can this be generically applied across ecosystems? My gut instinct is no. And then if not, how do we design and separate this so that we get the right version combination from this per on a per ecosystem basis so we're getting the correct results and we're not getting the dreaded false negatives. Oi. Yeah, we should.
Okay. Here is, yeah, I get dropped a link. So Will has a merged PR that deals with these P's at the end.
Yeah.
Oh, and Will did discuss with the PR author on this because the PR author for the one that we were generally discussing saw the equivalencies in Will's PR on how to complete your CPE state that it should look like this, where P18 is after the version in the update field, product version update. Maybe the fix will also consider this to the version, but it's not how it's supposed to be. Oh.
So this is like if the CPE has the P part in the update field rather than in the version field, it will result in the same thing, the same comparison. Whereas right now,
Right.
it seems like it's not taking into account the update field. I see. Yeah.
Got it. So it looks like a good change to me. I mean, with as soon as all tests pass and all that kind of thing. Would you guys agree?
Yeah, I'm game for it. I need to look specifically at. I still am getting like a little. I don't know what it is, but in the back of my brain, I'm like applying this to everything where we merge the update into the version doesn't
Yeah.
seem like is what we should be doing across ecosystems. I have to look at the data for like where we have other versions of CPEs in the database, what the update field looks like and how we're treating the version and update fields in those packages when we run Syft against like a source that contains those package. So like I have the example for Java, but I want to see the example for N other ecosystems to see if we're doing it consistently or if there's some other case that we haven't considered. Because I'd only be in favor of applying this in the case of like the Java ecosystem right now you know, without knowing how those other ones work. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, we just have to be really careful on this stuff because across all the ecosystems, the way versions are encoded and how they're translated to CPEs and handling comparisons is just, yeah.
Like
It's
the
very
blast
sensitive,
radius,
yeah.
the blast radius for this change on all results over all scans of Grype seems very high if that function is being applied across all of our matching ecosystems. Whereas, and it might be correct to do that. We just have to prove that it's correct to do that before we go ahead with it, because otherwise we've only proven that it's correct for this specific like JVM use case, which then if we're not interested in doing the full investigation, we should then scope the PR down to just fixing it for that specific matcher, like part of the matching.
I am kind of curious, and sorry if I just missed it, but is this the merged PR?
That's Will's merged PR,
But
where he did.
Is this actually targeted at just the JVM? Because it seems generic. It seems like it's the same conversation. I was just trying to figure it out.
So Will's, let's look at Will's. How is Will's different from IHEM's? This mixed version numbers that mix alphabetic and numeric components compare correctly. Oh,
Well,
because
there's one
2
big
is less than
difference.
14.
There's one big difference is that Will's changes the fuzzy matcher. This other PR changes the CPE handling.
So the fuzzy matcher only fires for certain ecosystems. That's right.
Yeah.
And Will's is also doing the fuzzy matcher for the version comparison. So it's only if you're like Will's is assuming that the version string you're getting is that 4.2.8p14, right? So it's already under the assumption that it's that, whereas the new PR from the user is no, I want to assemble this and I want to apply it to all CPE, all CPE matching in Grype.
Yeah.
So that's why it's like scoped a bit larger.
Got it. Yep. No, good thing for them, the user to bring up. Like, it's interesting. Okay. Good one.
Okay, so what's the outcome of this? We discussed it. I think now can we put, you can assign me to this one. I can do the investigation on just like, since I called out does this apply to other ecosystems? And I'll see what I can come up with. And I'll run the change by Will, since he has a lot of like current context for this.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Oh, sorry. Are you doing that, Keith? Oh, I'll stop doing things. And maybe,
Oh, no.
yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. And maybe the label, should we put it into discussion? Is discussion still right? Yeah, probably needs a little bit more, or investigation.
Yeah, I think keep discussion on it. I'll add comments, and then like maybe the next live stream, we'll discuss the findings and kind of the way forward for it.
Excellent.
The findings being like, how does this apply across all ecosystems, not just for the example that the user brought up.
Nice. Okay. Looks like this one's in a good state. We'll make some progress on it, and we're almost exactly at time. Like this, you know, it's rare that we kind of conclude a discussion like right at the top of the hour. So impressive.
I planned it that way.
Perfect. Okay, so I think with that, maybe we'll sign off for now. Thank you, everybody, as always, whether you're watching live or watching later. Really appreciate all your contributions and participation and hanging out with us every Thursday. Have a great week, and for those celebrating Thanksgiving, have a great Thanksgiving next week. We probably won't have our live session next week, but we'll continue the week after. So thanks all. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next time.
Take care.
Bye.
Be well.